Welcome back to the FinsFocus podcast. Tyler and I are back to preview this Buffalo Bills game in Buffalo. And Tyler, how are you doing?
Doing well. This is a really exciting week. The first 3 weeks have been exciting, but this is exciting for a different reason. This is the class of the AFC East. Miami looks like a team that can go out and win the division and compete for a championship through 3 games. But this is the team that you've got to get through when it comes to winning that division. So I'm really excited for this matchup. There's a lot of interesting individual matchups. We're excited to cover those and get you guys, a little preview on Dolphins Bills.
Of course. And I will say, I think it's important to say this and address this and acknowledge this. The 70 points that we just put up against Denver means nothing. It means literally nothing. Honestly, in the grand scheme of things, that's a week 3 victory. It was nice, and I love that Teron Armstead kind of shares this mindset, but it's like that really means nothing when it comes to Buffalo Bills week and when it comes to the end goal, which is a Super Bowl. It's a very nice win. It's nice to put up 70 points. Genuinely, it's been a great week, but we're on to Buffalo, and it's time to start focusing on them. And in that mindset, let's start with the Dolphins offense against the Bills defense. We'll start with our offense. And where do you want to go with that, Tyler?
I think we can probably start with this Bills back end because, Miami's been a passing team through 3 weeks of the season. Obviously, they had a great rushing day on Sunday, but the strength of Miami lies in their passing game, and the strength of the Bills defense traditionally has lied in their back end. And I think it's a really interesting battle because, first off, through 2 days of practice that is, marked down on the injury report, Jordan Poyer's been a DNP for 2 straight weeks, which is certainly interesting because that back end has kind of run that defense for years now. It's been, Hyde and Poyer kind of making plays and being aggressive when need be. And they consistently come out in their 2 high shells over and over and over again. And as Tua said during his press conference earlier this week, they kind of just come out and tell you what they're going to run, and then they run it, and they do it really well. So not having Poyer back there potentially is a lot of potentially miscommunication opportunities for those 2 safeties and for a Dolphins offense that stresses safeties so much with the motion, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I feel like there's an opportunity to make plays there. Also, I feel like the Bills are going to have to zone it up a lot just because, that's how every team has had to play the Dolphins. It's just with this receiver room, it's going to be difficult. Tre'Davious White, obviously, has been a really good player in the past. He struggled as of late, but their major guy that you're kind of looking out for is Teron Johnson at corner. He's their nickel guy. Tua, again, singled him out as a guy that he thinks is really important and makes that defense run. And I think that's going to be a big emphasis, is either not throwing as much at him because he's a big-time playmaker from the nickel, or putting him in situations where they can exploit him.
No, for sure. And I think avoiding Micah Hyde and Teron Johnson, that's probably going to be your best chance of succeeding down the field. Although, to be fair, I would argue that almost nobody can stop us, and maybe you're attacking them. I feel like this Dolphins offense, you can attack whoever you want, but Micah Hyde, great safety, and Teron Johnson, like you mentioned, also a great player. Now, the thing you mentioned is Tre'Davious White has been great, and now he's kind of regressing a little bit, but Christian Benford is the guy who I feel like you can attack for sure. Not to mention, Tre'Davious White, even if he does play up to what he has been capable of in the past, he's not the fastest guy. Like, I would argue he's one of the slower starting corners in terms of being in that good to great to elite tier. So I would think that those are guys you can attack with the speed, especially considering Jalen Waddle came out today, practiced fully. He's pretty much out of concussion protocol. He's almost like a guarantee to go at this point. So you have Jalen Waddle back. You still have Tyreek Hill, barring anything crazy between now and the game. So I really think those are 2 corners who you can attack. And we know this offense loves to attack the middle of the field. And with the corners on the outside not being that great anyways, and maybe not having to deal with Jordan Poyer, you can attack that middle of the field in the intermediate portion fairly well, you would assume. Now, going forward, the one thing that might prevent that is that they do have one of the best linebackers in the league, at least in my opinion, in Matt Milano. Yeah, he plays a little bit dirty. He definitely plays physical. He plays right on that line, which I'd argue you want your guys to play right on that line. And they also have a guy in Terrell Bernard who has replaced Tremaine Edmonds, and he has been awesome. Like, to be honest, I'll be completely honest, I really had no idea who he was heading into this year, but he has been tremendous for the Bills, filling in that role, left by a guy who's gone on to make 17 to 18 million at the linebacker position. So that tells you how good he was for the Buffalo Bills. But Terrell Bernard has come in and filled that role greatly, and it kind of gives them a little bit more of what they already have with Matt Milano. So they're almost strengthening the strength with that linebacker core. But I still think because of the back end, you can definitely attack the linebackers, especially considering to his anticipation and his accuracy.
Yeah, I think the linebackers, I think that's going to be the biggest battle. I know that I said, strength for strength, it is the Buffalo secondary versus Miami's receiving core and passing game. But I think the linebackers, as they are in every game when the Dolphins play, are the biggest key, because a lot of it comes down to how disciplined are the linebackers in front of you, and can you, on a play-to-play basis, make them more undisciplined with your tendencies. We saw in the Patriots game that they were going to clog the middle of the field with their linebackers and safeties, but Miami, by running the ball to the outside, by throwing to the flats, got them to change their tendencies, start running to the sideline, and then Tua started hitting those slants behind them. I think you could expect a similar game plan, and with the way that Buffalo plays up front, you could be looking at like more of a run-first game, a lot of 21 personnel with Alec Ingold. I don't think you're going to be using as much finesse in this game, just because I don't think the Bills have as much power up front as a lot of these teams do. So maybe trying to pound the ball more, pound the rock, and then put it into his hands when need be, because he's been awesome through the first 3 games, and try to manipulate those linebackers. I think you just don't want to give their linebackers opportunities to make plays. So, a guy like Terrell Bernard, who is only 6'1", 224 listed on ESPN, that might be a guy that you try to run at, and then based on the fact that you're running at him, try to put him in scenarios. I know that Dorian Williams is technically their starting weak side linebacker. He's a good run stuffing type, but if you can get him manipulated in the pass game, he's only a rookie, and based on his college tape, he wasn't as much of a pass stopper. So I think just trying to manipulate personnel and becoming more of a run-first team in this game, kind of like how you saw against New England, attacking the outside of the field. Obviously, this team's missing a Von Miller, so they don't have somebody who's a real great edge container. He's being replaced by Leonard Floyd, who's a great pass rusher, but not a great run stopper. If you can control the outer parts of the field and kind of open up that middle and throw behind those linebackers, getting them out of the way and making plays behind them is going to be crucial, because I feel like every time Tua has struggled with the Bills, it's been because those linebackers like Milano and, like in the past, Tremaine Edmonds have been really disciplined, and you have to throw them off their game.
No, 100%. And I think Von Miller not being in this game, obviously, even though Leonard Floyd is a good pass rusher, Von Miller is elite in that aspect. Him not playing is a huge help because, like you said, Leonard Floyd, not as good, but also, like you said, so much lighter, especially playing a 4-3 defensive end role. At least that's what they have him listed as on the depth chart. That is a super light defensive end. If anything, you want him playing like a 3-4 outside linebacker, if anything, as an edge rusher. So that is a super light front, especially considering if we're going to move to the front too. On their interior, they have Ed Oliver, who's a great player, but more of a pass rush type. He's not much of a run stopper. And then you have Greg Rousseau, who's up and coming, but again, more of a pass rush type. You really feel like you should be able to run the rock against this team because they don't have the guys to stop it. They don't have a big nose tackle. They don't have that physicality on the front. Again, yes, they do as the linebackers, but the way this offensive line has been playing and getting to the second level, you watch guys like Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson, Tron Armstead getting to that second level. You're hoping they can get their hands on a lighter guy in Terrell Bernard, and this run game can really be what it should be against this Bills team, because as good as Tua in the pass game has been, the run game has been just as good, in my opinion. Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, or Achane now, I guess we should call him that. Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert have been great, and they've been running physical, and they've been running up the middle just as much as they have been outside. So I think that's definitely something you want to do, is pound that rock, like you said. But yeah, that is a huge proponent of what we want the Dolphins offense to do. Again, you want to keep your strength to strength. You want to pass against these corners. But I really feel like this is a game where you're going to run the rock a lot, and you're going to do a lot more shotgun passing, not in the play action, because I don't think you want to turn your back to this Buffalo Bills defense.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely a game where, like we've been saying, I think you're going to want to run the ball, and I think you want to run it to the outside just to kind of draw those linebackers off of their game and kind of widen them more and more, attack the flats. I mean, this is a Bills defense that, like we said, relies so much on their back end of their secondary, their safeties, and the guys in the middle are really good. Like, Terrell Bernard's playing out of his mind at linebacker, we just said. Teron Johnson. These are like players, guys who play closer to the line and guys who play, a style of football where they're more condensed rather than being sideline to sideline type guys. So if you can put guys like Tre'Davious White, like Christian Benford in positions where they have to go make tackles and go stop guys like Tyreek on screens, or just a run outside to Raheem Mostert, who has gained weight and is now running people over, I think that's where you get those opportunities to break off those big runs like we saw with Raheem Mostert last year in the Bills game that I think was before the playoffs. I think those are kind of the big keys to this game. One of my biggest keys is making sure that you can run the ball, attack the outside, and widen that middle of the field, because those safeties obviously are really good, but if you put them in positions where they necessarily if you put them in positions where they have to play the outside and can't necessarily make those plays over the middle with an already middle of the field open defense, that's where, those timely Tua passes can be a dominant factor in you winning the game. I think this is definitely a Bills defense that is based a lot in like finesse, speed, and kind of flying around. And Miami, I think, matches that with their own speed, but has an element like we saw against the Patriots where they can punch it down your throat and they're not afraid of running, powerfully with Raheem Mostert, who, like I said, has just been running people over these first couple weeks.
And that just opens so much more up for the passing offense. I think that's what has really allowed, other than Tua's own development, that's what's really opened up this offense to be even more than it was last year, was the fact that now you have a run game that you genuinely have to respect, and you have a run game that you have to plan for and allocate resources to, which makes the passing game that much better. I feel like our passing game can succeed on anybody, but specific to the Bills, like you said, putting those corners in space, getting them down in the flats, whatever you have to do, making those guys the most impactful defenders is what is going to win you this game, because, again, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, they've been playing great. You want to limit those guys' ability to make plays on the ball and make plays on the ball carriers. So I think doing that and allowing the pass game to work off of the running game is going to be a huge proponent of what we should do and what I would assume we're going to do. You already know McDaniel is going to have some sort of trick in his bag as well, but I could definitely see Eric Ezukanma if he comes back. He's dealing with an injury, which kind of made sense for why he got the DNP last game, but I could see him getting some runs out of the backfield. You could see definitely some plays like that. Waddle coming back on the end arounds and the carries that he gets on the little tosses that we've seen throughout his career even. I think those are all plays where you just want to get these guys on the outside in space, which all that will do will open up the middle of the field that much more to allow Tua, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle to go to work. To be honest, there's not much analysis that you need from them. I mean, you know what they're going to do. They're going to pass down the middle, down your throat, and that's just how it's going to go. I don't know how much else there is to say about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to say about what those guys are good at. I think they're going to do a lot of what they're already good at, which is finding space in a middle of the field open coverage, which Miami has dominated this season. That's the thing, is that too high defenses have put a cap on a lot of the NFL's most explosive offenses. We've seen it with the Bengals. The Chiefs had to adjust to it. But Miami is built to play against too high because they dominate in that intermediate middle of the field. And that's where, putting those linebackers in positions to make plays is a little scary just because of the Bills having those kind of linebackers, but manipulating them, getting those passes over the middle of the field, it's going to be open if you can draw them outside, if you can run a timely play action, if you can just make sure that you're disguising what you're doing and come out in multiple looks. I think Miami really has an opportunity to get a lot of big chunk gains over the middle of the field. It just comes down to how disciplined are those linebackers, and can you throw them off their game, manipulate the personnel that's on the field, get guys like Dorian Williams out on the field, get Buffalo running heavier sets, less DBs, and then we know what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle can do given the space. So I think this is going to be more of a Raheem Mostert game.
I was just about to say that.
I think Miami's going to want to go heavy. I think it's going to be an Alec Ingold, Raheem Mostert 21 personnel game rather than a Devon Achane, Alec Ingold, or Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert type day like it was with Denver, just because I think that speed can be used on the perimeter. But I think when it comes to running the ball, they want guys who can get vertical and make it a problem for some of those DBs if Buffalo decides to go light like they have a lot this season. If they come out in their nickel and Miami sees running game advantages like they have a lot of the time this season, I wouldn't be shocked if Raheem Mostert gets a ton of touches.
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, Raheem Mostert, expect a heavy dose of him. Again, he's probably the most physical runner we have on the offense right now. So I would definitely expect a big dose of Raheem Mostert compared to a rookie in Devon Achane. Like, I know he just had the big game, but again, what's the word? Like, matchups makes fights or whatever in boxing. It's kind of the idea of the game here. And I think, again, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, and Mike McDaniel has made it clear that this personnel is going to change a lot week to week. Devon Achane doesn't get those kind of touches if they're not facing a Broncos-type defense where they feel they can exploit that. Like, we saw games where Eric Ezukama is getting, like, a ton of snaps, and then the next week he's an inactive. Like, this is just how Miami's offense is going to roll. They're going to have weeks and games where certain players are heavily featured, and then the next week they might not even touch the field. So I don't think that it's necessarily an indictment on the player Devon Achane is. It's just Raheem Mostert, I think, fits the bill for what Miami's going to try to do and what they did last year against a very similar Buffalo Bills team.
Fits the bill. I like that. No, I was going to say...
Oh, nice. Nice gag. Totally on purpose. Nah.
Totally on purpose. No, I was going to say... No, I agree, and that's accentuated by the fact that you have a guy who just went for 200 yards, but against a more physical team like the Patriots, you did not see him get any touches almost in a guy like Devon Achane. So you're right. Mike McDaniel has made it plenty clear that this game plan is going to be ever-changing, even though you do see the consistent slant wheels and the RPOs that they like to run. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for. So that's what we're feeling for the Dolphins offense versus the Bills defense. I think it's time we swap over and kind of do the little vice versa thing. Let's swap over to the Dolphins defense and the Bills offense. We'll start with the Bills offense just because they do have a guy in Josh Allen who, I'll be honest, has been turning over the ball quite a lot. Even though they won 41-3, whatever the final score, or 37-3, whatever the final score ended up being in that Bills-Commanders game, he had a very, very kind of standard stat line. If you had to ask me, he had one passing touchdown, one pick, like 20 for 32 for like, I don't know, 280 yards, something like that. That's off the top of my head. I should pull it up. You know, we're a podcast, but...
It was that and then 218 instead of 280.
So even worse. So, fantastic.
Even less yardage, but... Yeah, I mean, that's the point with Josh Allen is he's been turning the ball over a decent amount. He had those fumbles, the interceptions against the Jets, but he's obviously still a freak and somebody who's given Miami a bunch of trouble. So definitely the spearhead of this matchup and what makes this Bills offense go.
100%. But the difference this year, at least from when I watch the Bills and I watch the Bills tape, is that they are committing to the run, kind of like the Dolphins have this year, where in the past it would be the Josh Allen show regardless if they're passing or running. James Cook has gotten a lot of touches, and for what it's worth, it has been the James Cook show. He gets a majority of their touches. It's pretty much a single back there. Latavius Murray will get in every now and then. Same thing with Damian Harris, but it is the James Cook show, and he's more of a finesse guy, but they're using him in a bunch of different situations. But the big thing here is they're actually committing to it. They're running the ball a lot more. How else are they going to win 41-3 against the Commanders with Josh Allen only throwing for 218 yards? It's because they are committing to the run. And I remember in game one, a lot of Bills fans were kind of frustrated with that because it didn't work against the Jets. And you're thinking, what are we doing going away from something that's worked for so long? But the idea behind it is that you have things like this that can happen where now it's opening up stuff for Josh Allen when he's not throwing those arm punts on third down. So I think that's a huge proponent is stopping the run, regardless of if it's Josh Allen or James Cook. But it's just something worth noting that the run game is actually something to be worried about with this Bills team this year.
Yeah, you just can't let them be multiple. To be honest, the personnel isn't as much what scares me. It's, are they going to commit to it enough where they can, potentially gash Miami with a couple big plays and force them to come out in more base looks? Because I think Miami has the personnel to stop the run. Even in the nickel, I think if you come out with 4 linemen of Wilkins, Sealer, and then I guess the 2 linebackers of, Phillips and Chubb, I think those are guys who can get after it in the run game. But through the first couple games, it's been rough sledding for them at times. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, does Fangio let them attack more? Or are you going to see more of this 2-gapping style? I wouldn't be shocked with the kind of finesse team that the Bills are, and the fact that, up front, they're not the best. This is one of their bigger weaknesses on this team, is that interior offensive line and the offensive line as a whole. I wouldn't be shocked if you kind of see Wilkins and Sealer and these guys up front being more aggressive and more so trying to make their own plays, and because you just don't want to have them 2-gap and then force these linebackers to have to make plays. Then you come out in heavier linebacker sets, and then that's where Josh Allen can kind of beat you down the field. I think Miami wants to sit back in that 2-eye coverage. If you look last year, Josh Boyer, when Miami beat Buffalo and held them to that 19-point offensive performance or whatever it was because of those 2-high structures that he was dropping back into, and he wasn't blitzing as much. When you force Josh Allen to throw against 2-high, he gets antsy, he forces the ball, and oftentimes he makes mistakes. It's what the Jets did. It's what a lot of teams do. So I think that making sure that your defensive line is eating up front and, your 2 linebackers, whether that's Baker and Van Ginkel, Baker and Long, whatever combination of Baker, Long, Van Ginkel, whatever combination of those guys is making plays, I think you really want to emphasize making plays when you only have 2 linebackers on the field, just because you don't want to allow Josh Allen to exploit mismatches when it comes to throwing to a Dawson Knox, throwing to a Dalton Kincaid, throwing to a James Cook out of the backfield. Because that's where Miami struggled these first 2 weeks, is those little crossers, these little checkdowns. There were a bunch of them against the Broncos, and obviously we won by 50 against the Broncos, but a worse offensive performance, and a lot of those plays likely matter. They caught David Long in space, and they threw little checkdowns and little slants to Cortland Sutton. They caught Jerome Baker lacking over the middle, and they would throw it behind him. These are the kind of plays you don't want to give up to this Bills team, because they've got these tight ends and running backs who are yak threats, despite the fact that they, don't necessarily fit the slot receiver mold. That they even have guys like a Deontay Hardy who they can throw the ball and he makes moves. Trent Sherfield, a big slot type guy who we obviously know about. There's a lot of players that they have that they can kind of just throw the ball and let them go make these little yak plays. And I think it comes down to, can Miami tackle those up well? They have the safeties to do it, while also keeping a cap on Josh Allen potentially throwing it deep and the run game. So I think it's a weird balance. I think Miami has to play well when they play light, especially against the run, in order to stop all of those things from becoming a problem.
If you need a water break, that's okay, because you just spat for a long time. Spitting facts. No,
I will definitely take one.
Yeah, take a sip of water. No, I was just going to say, I agree. And this might be one of the rare times where we give Josh Boyer some credit and we actually compare what he did and go, we might want to do that again, because you're right. Playing Javon Holland as a high safety instead of dropping him down to play that cover 2, the 2 high safeties, force Josh Allen to go underneath every single play. And like you said, he got super antsy, tried to push the ball down the field, and you can't do that when Javon Holland's back there. And that led to mistakes, and that led to a Dolphins victory last year. So we're not going to say it that often, but Josh Boyer kind of came up with a game plan that was solid. Now, what did gash us with Josh Boyer is when he sent blitzes in the red zone for no reason, and they have a running back check down wide open for touchdowns. But fortunately for us, we have Vic Fangio now, and I'm expecting that we're not going to be doing a lot of that. However, Vic Fangio is already known for the 2 high safeties and the shell that he runs, so I think that's going to be great. That's going to play in well to what we want to do to stop Josh Allen and that offense. And going back to our offense for a quick second here, because I think it directly relates, you're going to hear me say this a lot. Because of the defense that Vic Fangio runs, which allocates so much more to the pass than versus the run, especially considering the personnel on this Dolphins defense where you don't have a big nose tackle, even though Christian Wilkins is a great run stopper, getting leads is going to be so huge. in this game and in all the games that Miami really has a good competition against, like against the Philadelphia Eagles, against the Chiefs, getting leads and ensuring that these quarterbacks have to pass against this daunting pass defense is going to be huge, because I've said it so many times. I'm going to say it again because it needs to be acknowledged. Vic Fangio defenses get ran on. I feel like people aren't ready to hear that. They do get ran on, and that is something that you have to expect. If you can just be average against the run, that is a success, because you are expecting that the pass defense will be phenomenal, and that's what we've seen thus far. It's kind of what happened in the Chargers game too. You're going to get run on a lot. That is okay. If you can just be average, force them horizontal so they can't gash you, like Tyler said, if you limit those big plays, those aggressive plays from the run game, that will be huge, because forcing Josh Allen to throw against the shell and to throw underneath every play, he will get antsy and he will throw into coverage where he probably shouldn't. So I think that's a huge thing, is us getting the lead early and forcing them to pass. Because if you go against this Bills team that's now committing to the run and allowing him to do that, like we said about Tua and his run game, that's going to allow Josh Allen to play off the run tremendously, and that's going to put our defenders in even worse positions. Say all you want about how good this defense is. If you let the Bills run on you and become multiple, exactly like Tyler said, you will get dominated on that side of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a big part of it comes down to, like you said, force those running backs horizontal. Don't let them get vertical, because like we have the guys to make the tackles in space. Justin Bethel has been phenomenal in the nickel and dime. Cater Coe, who's one of the best tacklers at DB. And then you've got the two safeties in Elliott and Javon Holland, who rarely miss tackles at all because of the fact that they're great tacklers and they're great like with the ball in space. And that's why I've said that they're two of the most underrated safeties in the league, especially Elliott, because nobody's talking about him right now. And that's why it comes down to those guys like Phillips, like Sealer, and or Phillips, Chubb, Wilkins, Sealer. It comes down to that. Those are probably going to be the four on the field, because you don't want to put a Raekwon Davis out there. Just, you don't want to have five down and then, get gashed behind you. If you can come out in those lighter looks and you can go eat them alive in the run game, which Sealer and Wilkins are capable, they can be game wreckers in this scenario. It's just going to come down to, can they navigate those double teams? Because that's what's been a problem for them. Is Vic Fangio going to change up the defense a little bit, which is what I'm kind of anticipating, why I'm saying you might not see as much of a Raekwon Davis, because I think that it's going to be more of the attacking style that you saw at times versus the Patriots. I think putting those guys in positions to be hyper-aggressive is going to be the main way to stop that run game, get those guys horizontal, and not allow Josh Allen to throw it behind you for big gains.
And speaking of their pass game, because we haven't talked about it too much, again, like kind of James Cook, has been a heavy dose of Stephon Diggs. He's the thing that makes that pass game go. And I don't know if we'll see too much of Xavier Howard following him around. Honestly, we probably won't see that in a Vic Fangio defense like we did in a Josh Boyer defense. But what we will see is us maybe kind of bracketing him a little bit. I forget the coverage that it's called, because I remember reading it when I was learning about the Fangio defense. But there are calls, I think Zeus is one of them, where you have a guy like Stephon Diggs and you want to bracket him and allocate some resources specific to him to shut down that receiver. They did it to Jamar Chase 2 years ago, I believe, when Vic Fangio was coaching with the Broncos. I can't remember the specifics, but basically there's a coverage where instead of playing the cover 4 shell completely and kind of allocated resources kind of evenly out across the field, you can allocate a few more extra resources and have a couple of different checks, a couple of different communications where Stephon Diggs gets bracketed a little bit more. And then when you force Josh Allen to throw to people who aren't named Stephon Diggs, because Stephon Diggs is a top 3, top 2 route runner in the NFL, top 5 receiver in the NFL. If you can force him to force the ball to a Gabriel Davis down the field, which we've already said, you love that because you have Javon Holland back there. If you can force him to throw to guys like Khalil Shakir and Deontay Hardy, who have yet to kind of make their impact in the lead, unless they have a huge game, I really feel like you can stop the passing game of Josh Allen.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the strengths for this Bills team, it's going to all run through Josh Allen, and it comes down to, can you just make sure that when you have Josh Allen doing that, is he in a favorable position to win, or is he not? And the best way to put him in not favorable positions is put him in 3rd and long. Put him in obvious passing positions against 2 eye safeties where he's going to have to force the ball down the field. And that's what Miami did when they beat them last year. And that's what the recipe has been for beating Josh Allen in the past. It's what the Bengals have done. It's what all of these teams do is you put Josh Allen in two eye coverages and obvious third downs and passing situations, and you hope that he makes mistakes. Because if you put him in a position where it's 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1, he's absolutely huge, can make every throw on the field, and is playing against heavier boxes, which means less defenders playing back and more opportunities for him to make plays. So just putting him in not favorable situations, and like you said, taking leads so there's more obvious passing scenarios is going to be the number one key to this game.
And speaking of putting them in more obvious passing scenarios and allowing, and like Jalen Phillips said after the Chargers game, earning the right to rush the passer, I actually wanted to talk about the outside linebackers a little bit because in the past, we have struggled to tackle Josh Allen. It has been a huge issue, whether it's containing or setting the edge or whatever the case is. We have struggled to tackle or we'll take bad angles. Most of this is at Jalen Phillips, even though I'm a Jalen Phillips believer, he has had that issue. But I think forcing them to get into those passing downs, like we said, getting the lead and allowing Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips to attack Josh Allen, that's going to be huge. I think having Bradley Chubb is actually a huge addition against the Bills just because whatever Dolphins fans think about Bradley Chubb, the one thing you will not be able to take away from him because it's just a fact, he is a large individual. He sizes up to Josh Allen, and that is a guy who can bring him down if he gets his paws on him. So I think it's a huge, huge, huge deal that Bradley Chubb is here because I don't think we had him against the Bills the first time because at that point we hadn't traded for him. So I think having Bradley Chubb it was a deadline move, exactly. So I think having Bradley Chubb there is going to help tremendously. And then Jalen Phillips, if he plays, because I'll be honest, we have no idea yet. And if anything, I don't even think he practiced there or was seen at practice. So chances are he might not be there. Again, that's kind of still up in the air. You really need to see them get after, take better angles, set the edge, even if it is against Josh Allen, because Josh Allen, again, we've said they've committed to the run, which they have, but Josh Allen is still a threat to run out of that backfield. That's something that you definitely want to contain. And in general, like Tyler said, whether it's the DBs, whether it's the linebackers, whether it's the defensive linemen, tackling is going to be huge. And now I know that sounds kind of like the sky's blue statement, you have to tackle. It's the NFL, I get that. But against the Bills, you absolutely have to tackle, especially considering how many issues we've had tackling in the past against this team. Now, I know that's when we ran predominantly man-to-man, so you can't look at the quarterback, all that type of stuff. I understand that. But tackling Josh Allen specifically and tackling in general will probably be the difference in this game.
Yeah, I think it like a lot of the stuff that Miami has done to lose these games against the Bills has come down to discipline stuff. And the great thing about that is all of those are fixable. Pre-snap penalties at the end of the playoff game, those are fixable and largely through this point of the season have been fixed. Tackling has looked really good thus far this season. We haven't had that many huge plays where there were a bunch of broken tackles. There were some against the Chargers, but since then Miami's really put the clamps on and they haven't had problems with that. Winning that middle 8 where it's like the last 4 of the second quarter, first 4 of the third quarter, not letting teams score in that little window. These are all the little things that Miami has just done better. Their pass blocking's better up front. Their run blocking's better up front. There's less penalties for not knowing where you're supposed to be. The landmarks are better. This is the kind of game that now, being this Miami Dolphins team through 3 weeks, you have to expect to go out and win this game. And I think it's going to be a huge landmark if Miami can come out and win as a statement to the world that this is a team that can go out and win a Super Bowl. This is kind of where Miami Dolphins teams have struggled in the past. It's been these test games. Miami hasn't gone 4-0 since Dan Marino was the quarterback. It's always these little test games. If you can win this one, it's just one step closer to feeling that you're one of those teams that can go out, compete in the AFC, and lock up home field advantage in playoff games.
And speaking of the run blocking and the pass blocking, I do just want to acknowledge the fact that the Bills' offensive line is their point of struggle on that offense now that they have committed to the run. I feel like we just have to make a little bit bigger of a deal about that. Deion Dawkins is their left tackle. Left to right, it's Connor McGovern, Mitch Morse, Osiris Torrance, and Spencer Brown. That is not a good position unit or group. That is something that you have to take advantage of, whether it's getting to the quarterback or whether it's stopping the run. Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer should have a field day up the middle, especially considering you're going to run a lot of nickel where both of those guys are on the field at the same time. Same thing with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, like we said. You should be getting to Josh Allen and forcing him to throw underneath, throw quickly, which plays right into our hands. So that's something that we definitely want to hit on. Now, the one thing that I do want to hit on at the end of this podcast here, as we get to the end of the podcast, is just kind of a greater outlook on the season and in the AFC specifically. Like you touched on, this is a game that is a landmark, like you said, for what we are as a team in the AFC, because you have the Kansas City Chiefs, you have the Buffalo Bills as the top end of that spectrum. Say what you want about the Bengals. Listen, I don't think they're playing good at all, but they've made it to the last 2 AFC championships. So who am I to say that they're not going to pull it all back together with Joe Burrow once he gets healthy? I do know it's looking very wishy-washy right now when it comes to Cincinnati, but again, who am I to say that they're not going to turn it around? Because guess what? The last 2 seasons, they have had horrible starts. They have lost to the Steelers like crazy and gotten pounced and gotten trounced and gotten demolished just for them to make it to the AFC Championship anyways. So I think that that's something to put yourself in that group and to put yourself ahead of that group early on is going to be huge. And it just gives yourself a lot more room if you win this game against the Bills in Buffalo, because you've already beaten the New England Patriots in New England. That's 2 divisional games. You have 2 division games against Zach Wilson now and the Jets. And then you have, again, 2 games, New England, Buffalo, in Miami. Those are all very, very, very winnable. And this was coming from a person who thought if you can sweep the Patriots and go 1-1 with the Jets and Bills, considering that I thought they were going to have Aaron Rodgers, that was going to be a success. You're putting yourself way ahead of the curve when it comes to your division and for the entire conference.
Exactly. I mean, just starting 4-0, I was looking at I'll find it right now. I mean, obviously, none of these are 100%, but I was looking at like an analytics-based playoff predictor that showed, how much this game means to the Dolphins' chances of making the playoffs. If they lose this game, their playoff probability based on these projections from Sumer Sports, based on 10,000 simulations, if they lose this game, their playoff chances are still at 80%. But if they win this game, they have a 90% chance of making the playoffs. That 10% difference is huge, especially for a team like Miami that has had injury issues down the stretch of these last couple of seasons. Tua has gotten hurt, I know. He's been great thus far, no injuries, knock on wood that he doesn't for the rest of the season. But you've got guys like Teron Armstead. We don't know if Jalen Ramsey is going to be 100% when he comes back. Racking up these wins now is so crucial, and especially being the kind of team that the Miami Dolphins are, putting yourself in a situation to, down the stretch of the season, potentially get home playoff games, potentially, we're working right now with a team that is the only undefeated team in the entire AFC. So stacking up these wins before you have to go play those tough games in December, which Miami has against the Ravens, against the Cowboys. They've got the Eagles, I think, next month. There's so many tough games. So racking up wins, especially against division opponents right now, can mean a lot for not only if you make the playoffs, but also your playoff standing.
No, 100%. That's actually exactly what I was going to bring up. But also you have AFC teams who you expected to be good, getting off to rough starts. And again, getting ahead of the curve is huge. The Bills 2-1, that makes sense. But the Jets being 1-2, obviously without Aaron Rodgers now, that's huge. The Steelers are 2-1. The Ravens are 2-1. The Browns are 2-1. The Bengals, who again, like I said, who am I to say they won't be there, are 1-2. That's huge. The Colts are the only 2-1 team in the whole AFC South. And then you have the Chiefs dropping a game to the Lions in game 1. That's huge because if this team gets a bye, I mean, that's looking ahead, but you would assume the Chiefs are the only team to stand away in that. That Lions game could be a huge factor. The Broncos are 0-3. The Chargers are 1-2. They were almost 0-3 after last week. You're putting yourself in a position where you can set yourself up for success. Speaking of the injuries, you're putting yourself in a position where those games at the end of the year don't mean as much. Maybe you can rest the last game. Maybe, which is a huge help. There are so many opportunities that this Bills win, if we do, allows you to kind of go with, and it allows you to do so much if you can win this game. So I think that's a huge, it's an underlying story that obviously it's going to be the biggest game of the week. Games aren't flexed this early, but this would be the game that got flexed if it was. But this is a huge game, divisional matchup, but it cannot be overstated how important this is for the entire AFC and for the division, which, as we know, has been ran by the Bills for the last several years. So it's super important to try and get this win. Even if we don't, which I don't even want to put that energy into the world, you're not in the worst spot, and that's what going 3-0 with the first 2 games on the road allows you to do. Like, think about it this way. If you think, oh, we're 3-0 already and we won the first 2 games at home, we barely have any away games left, like that set us up for success for this Bills game. Think about that in the greater scheme of the entire season, because that's what winning this Bills game allows you to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, you have 3 of your first 4 games at home. You've got this has been a ton of travel. They had to go out to LA on the West Coast. They had to go up to New England. Then they had a home game, and now you've got to go up to another division opponent. If you can somehow pull out this game and be 4-0, where you faced 3 teams on the road, you had a matchup at home that you were supposed to win. You locked that up, but only 1 matchup at home, 3 teams on the road, and 2 of those are divisional opponents. I mean, we know how strength of schedule works, and there's going to be tough opponents on the schedule, but being able to just lock up games like this right now, either way, the Miami Dolphins are in really good shape for the rest of the season, but this is a crucial game, and this is the one that you can tell in the player press conferences, in the coach press conferences. There was no victory Monday. It's about winning this game right here, and it's going to be really exciting to watch, because I think both teams realize how much this matters for a week 4 game, 1 o'clock in the middle of the season, and I'm super excited to see it.
All right, I'm going to put you out on the spot here. And I was thinking about doing this, but you know what? We're just going to put you on the spot. I'm not even going to give you what this is, and we'll probably start doing this every week, almost every episode, because we can do it after the game when we actually know who these players are, but we can also try and predict it. Give me the player looking out for on the Bills defense and offense, and we'll also do the offensive player of the game for the Dolphins, offensively and defensively. And we'll try and kind of predict what's going to happen. And then obviously, after we know the game, we can pick our own studs. Because after the Broncos game, you might pick Justin Bethel. I might pick someone else. Who knows? And we both have our selections. So give me your pick for the Buffalo's defense.
So who do I think is the most impactful player to watch out for on Buffalo's defense? Or
yes.
Who do I think, is this the key player?
Yes.
I think Tua shouted him out, so this is a bit of an easy one, but I'm going Taron Johnson. I think a lot of the Buffalo Bills game plan is going to come down to, are they going to be flying to the football? Because there's so many fast guys on this team. There's so many players who can get vertical quickly, and it's going to come down to guys like Taron Johnson who are playing physical in the nickel to come down and make tackles. So I think his performance is going to be the biggest dictator of if Miami wins or loses this game.
Okay, I'm going to go with Terrell Bernard. Again, he's taking over that Tremaine Edmonds role. And like you said, they're going to be playing to fly to the ball. But as a linebacker in the middle of the defense, again, we talked about this earlier. You know how much we're going to try and utilize that middle of the field. If Terrell Bernard comes out and shows off some fantastic range that he might have, who knows, then that would be, to me, one of the most valuable things that they can have, especially considering if he can continue to do what he's doing as a rusher and all that type of stuff and as a run stopper. He just had a great game. He's coming off a great game. So that'd be a player I'm watching out for and a player that I'm looking out for on the Bills defense. What about for the Bills offense?
I would say Josh Allen, because I feel like that's the obvious answer. That's the guy you have to go out and stop. But I'm going to go a little different here. I'm going to say that my guy to watch on this Bills offense is going to be Dalton Kincaid, just because I think him and Knox are already a dangerous duo, and the way that Kincaid works in space, they're going to have him running a lot of routes from the slot, and I anticipate a lot of short crossers and drags. It's going to come down to Miami being able to tackle on those plays and not letting him turn those into big yak opportunities. So stopping Kincaid and Knox, and especially Kincaid, who was the most talented pass-catching tight end in this draft, that's my guy to watch out for.
Okay, so for me, what I'm going to go with, and this is just an opportunity for me to talk about Stephon Diggs. I was in love with this dude, when he was with the Vikings, and it broke my heart to see him go to the Buffalo Bills. I still draft him in fantasy. He's the one guy I get hyped for on the Bills still. And I think this is just, this is the platform to say it now that we have a platform. I truthfully believe Stephon Diggs is the best route runner in the NFL. I know Justin Jefferson is out there. I know Devontae Adams is out there.
He's up there for sure.
To me, Stephon Diggs is easily the best because he can do it at all 3 levels. And he has done it in the red zone. He has done it intermediate. He can do it deep. He can do whatever you need. He also doesn't have elite speed, but he still gets 30 yards of separation, it feels like. So my guy to watch out for is Stephon Diggs. And like I said earlier, the whole offense runs through him. Yeah, James Cook would be a guy I might have selected because they're committing to the run. But literally, it's all through Stephon Diggs. To me, this was like in the past when you would say, oh, last year, if you shut down Tyreek, this offense might struggle a little bit. To me, if you stop Stephon Diggs, and if you stop Stephon Diggs, that makes them not multiple because that forces them to run the ball. That means you shut down their offense, at least in my opinion. Yes, Josh Allen is an alien, but he's turning over the ball, and he doesn't look like an alien. He looks like a player who the idea of him looks better than who he actually is. So to me, if you can stop Stephon Diggs, that is a huge, huge advantage for what we can do as a defense. And speaking of the defense, who is your player to look out for this Dolphins defense?
For the Dolphins defense, I said that the key to this game is going to be on the interior, and I'm picking the man who wants his money and the man who has, like, it seems like every divisional game, things get just a little chippy with Christian Wilkins. And I love it because that's the kind of guy I want on my team. He's the guy I'm picking. I feel like if Miami's going to win this football game, either him or Zach Sealer's in for a big day. And I'm picking the guy who wants his money. Christian Wilkins is a monster. I feel like he's going to get after it. And I feel like that's a player who, if Miami wins, you're going to be looking on defense like, we need to pay that guy.
All right, so I'm going to give two just because I am going to cheat a little bit because he might not play.
Yeah, you are cheating.
Yeah, I am cheating. That is cheating. But if Jalen Phillips plays, he will be my player to watch because I think the fact that he has struggled a little bit against this Bills offensive line, against Josh Allen, because he has not struggled against the offensive line. He struggled in terms of angles and getting to the quarterback and Josh Allen. But to me, if Jalen Phillips can kind of flip that around, take better angles, get to the quarterback, and instead of having these almost sacks, have actual sacks, get pressure up the middle, get pressure on the outside, do what he needs to do as he's honestly a solid run stopper in terms of setting the edge, but just that pass rushing, getting to that, instead of it being half a second away from the sack, completing the sack, because pressures and pass rush win rate is always great. I'm not going to take away from that, but you want him to finish off some of these plays. So if Jalen Phillips is healthy, that's my guy, because if he can put up a 2-sack game against a guy like Deion Dawkins, who is not that good, I know he makes the Pro Bowl. That's like Xavier Howard making the Pro Bowl last year. Trust me, he's not good. So if Jalen Phillips can attack him, that would be my player to watch. But because he might not play, I get to talk about two players. So the second guy I'm going to name, just in case Jalen Phillips doesn't play, is Javon Holland, just because last year he was the guy who the defense was built around to stop. Josh Boyer was a horrible defensive coordinator, but he built a game plan around Javon Holland playing high safety, and that shut down Josh Allen. Speaking of taking away Stephon Diggs, the guy you're going to do that with is Javon Holland, because that forces Josh Allen to go underneath every single play, and we all know he doesn't want to do that all game. Like we said so many times, he's going to get antsy, he's going to put the ball up, and with the guys with the ball skills on this defense, like an Xavier Howard or Javon Holland, like I mentioned, those balls will get picked off. So give me Javon Holland as my player to watch, and then I'll give my player, because I'll go first this time, for the Dolphins offense to watch. And for me, it's going to be Alec Ingold. Like you said, this is going to be a way more physical game. I can definitely see him getting a couple catches in this game too, because as you know, Mike McDaniel loves running stuff where he has counters to it. So you can set yourself up in I form, in a strong formation. If he's lined up as the H-back where you're thinking they're going to run to that side, boom, he's running the other way. He's a pass catching option. And there you have Alec Ingold. So I think he's going to be a huge proponent of that. And obviously also as a blocker, as his main role, what he's going to do, getting to the second level, demolishing guys on those pulling times where he's blocking edge rushers and stuff. He's such a little kind of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but he's a little utility knife on the offense for this Dolphins team. So give me Alec Ingold as my player to watch on this offense for the Bills.
Okay. So
Swiss Army knife was the word I'm looking for. I'm an idiot.
Swiss Army knife was what you were looking for. But before I give my player, I'm going to give a little rationale. This is a nationally televised game pretty much. This is the A team for CBS. This is Nance, it's Romo, which means a majority of the United States of America and other places as well will be watching this game if they turn on CBS to watch football, which leads me to believe that there's going to be a player who's going to have their coming out party to the world. I think that there's somebody who is going to have a performance that puts them on the map. It seems to always happen. Last year it was the Chargers game where Christian Wilkins was shutting everything down. I know we lost, and people were like, "Oh my God, Christian Wilkins is that guy." I feel like there's going to be a player that just announces to the world that they've arrived, and I'm picking a guy up front. I'm picking Robert Hunt because I feel like he's the most underrated guard in all of football, potentially one of the most underrated offensive linemen. I feel like this is the kind of game where he can absolutely maul up front. I think you could see a lot of those like focused camera angles watching Robert Hunt go one-on-one, have those double teams, move up to the next level. I'm picking Robert Hunt as my guy, who I think if the Dolphins win, that's the reason that they were winning on offense, is because he is one of the best offensive linemen in the entire league right now, and I think he's going to show it on Sunday.
Yeah, other than Dalton Kincaid, we gave no love to the tight ends, but that's fine. Durham Smythe and Dawson Knox, they are who they are. Just figured I'd point that out. But other than that, I think that wraps up our show for previewing the Bills game, unless we've missed something, or unless you want to say anything more.
That's about it. We'll be back with a recap to this game, a preview for the following week, which I believe is the Giants. Should be a fun one. However, like we said, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a comment with your score prediction, because this should be a very fun game. And make sure to leave a comment with who your player to watch is, because like we said, this is a really fun divisional matchup. Feels like there's just something that is waiting to, like, it feels like the clock is ticking. It feels like something is coming. This feels like it's going to be a big game, especially with both of these teams now playing better and better each week. It's going to be really exciting. Make sure to follow, make sure to subscribe, and I guess we'll be back next time.
We need to do one more thing. We have to give our score prediction. We forgot.
Okay. We will give okay. I'll go first. I think Miami's going to put up a lot of points on offense.
Ooh.
And I'm going to pick them. I'm going to pick them to win this game. I think it's going to be. I'm gonna say that Buffalo kind of. I genuinely think Miami is going to score a lot of points, and I think that they're going to hold Buffalo to enough points on offense where they can win by a decent amount. I'm going to go Miami 30, Buffalo 24, but I think it's going to be like it's 2 scores late in the game and Buffalo tightens it to 1, and then Miami ices it. I think it's going to be Miami is going to be up by a decent amount. They hold the lead. Buffalo scores a touchdown late. I'm going Miami 30, Buffalo 24. What's yours?
I'm smiling. I am cheesing because mine is 27-24 for the Miami Dolphins. I definitely do think we get the win. I'll be honest. The way this team has started this year, I don't know if I'll ever pick the Dolphins to lose on this show. We'll see if that ever happens. But to me, it's all about getting the lead. Like we said, they might come back late. I could also see this game being tied and maybe a little Jason Sanders winning field goal, get revenge from the second game of last season. Who knows? I'm not too confident. Maybe I want to switch my score prediction because relying on a Jason Sanders field goal to win the game does not feel like a winning formula. But I'm going to say 27-24. We're probably going to be up 27-21. They kick a late field goal, try and get one again. Our defense stops them, and I think that's how we win the game. For what it's worth, we're sorry we forgot the score prediction till the end. It's unfair of us to ask you in the comments to do it without us giving it. But thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, like, follow us on Twitter, follow the account on Twitter. Do all the things that you know you need to do, like this video, like the podcast, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. We're new onto the scene. We're new as a Dolphins podcast, and we're just really excited to get it going here. So thank you so much.